this is for you. How are you? Good morning. Thank you so much, Jodi. I feel so grateful. So I met you. It's an interesting story how I met you. I met you in California while I was like a week before taking care of our dear friend Sarah, and it turned out that she was staying at your home. So randomly, we were meant to meet, I guess. And then you have shown me, I moved to New York City, and you have shown me a very generous and a beautiful community that you have built, and you're so generous on that, and I'm very grateful. You're very focused on bringing women together and how to open the doors and connect women that are doing interesting stuff, and that for me has been very inspirational. And you're just always doing that in very interesting settings, like those wonderful walks that you're doing once a month in Central Park with Rosie. The different events that I have been. Last week I did this panel as well, that it's all about women having access to funds. So I would love you to share a little bit about that.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Really nice to be here, everyone. Yeah, I'm a social activist, and I think many of you in the room are as well. So when we bring our business lens around how do we impact change, that's what I do. Just a little framework. In my early career, I was actually a sports agent at IMG, and we worked with the fittest bodies, the fittest athletes at the peak level. And I realized in that experience that actually it all starts in here. So peak performance is actually an inner game. And from that experience, I became really enamored with how capital can move to impact. How capital can move to help the least among us. How capital can become a bridge between our abundance in the land of plenty and those extraordinary people in other parts of the world that may not have our access, but should have all the same kinds of opportunities. And so in my middle career, I launched a beauty brand by the name of Peacekeeper Cosmetics, CAUSE, which was a cosmetic line that gave donations to urgent human rights issues. And the really important thing about that is that how do we build this bridge of our buying power at Whole Foods, at Nordstrom's, at Henry Bendel, and our own journey of nurturing ourselves while having the witnessing the impact of transforming someone's life. And so that happened, and in that experience, I fell in love with capital. And so now, these days, I've started 2 organizations. One is called Women Funding the World, which is a membership for women who really want to understand the feminization of capital so living systems thrive. What does that mean? It means that we look at our investments through a full supply chain lens. And men and women come, these are amazing men who are also coming into the room to diversify more capital to women. And Black and brown women in America see less than 1% of venture capital. Women see less than 3%. And so these are amazing men, and we're celebrating men who are doing this, and the women who are really committing to moving more capital to climate solutions and other things. The second part of this is that we founded a nonprofit called the Diversified Capital Coalition, which is a 10-year strategy to move that under 3% of capital to 10% in 10 years. It's audacious, it's badass, and my colleague Ray Alexander from the New School Parsons eLab is here working on a feasibility study with us that will launch in January. So if anyone's interested in how we can, men and women collectively, create FOMO and learn the bottlenecks that are stopping men from allocating more capital to women, we'd love to talk to you about it.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. And in this journey of allocating more capital to women, and that's the whole chain that you were talking before, how do you relate that to sustainability? And how, now that we're in Climate Week, like how do you see that happening?
That's such a great question. think one of the things you said about this conversation is like, where do you start, right? And so one of the things I was doing with Peacekeeper Cosmetics is attaching a QR code, which you've seen this happen, where you can actually meet the farmer who's picking the rosemary or spearmint in the product that you're manufacturing, and showing how a second source of income can really lift that community. So here you have a product on the shelf at Nordstrom's funding a community, family, women who, and their husbands and children, who are picking that incredible ingredient that's a part of your product. I think it all comes down to committing to a supply chain that's regenerative, that protects living systems. So I'm an advisor to a group called GARN, G-A-R-N, which is a nonprofit that advocates on behalf of species. They're a group of lawyers around the globe. And so they go into courts of law and they fight on behalf of frogs and tadpoles and leopards. One of the lawsuits that they won was a waterfall, for which there was 2 sprouts, and a minor group came in and destroyed one, and so they showed all the diversity of living species in the second one, and went to court and won on behalf of a frog. And so it's our job in the travel industry, in any other industry, to really look at your entire supply chain and to rate it. And you can do this through some organizations that we can share to help you evaluate, like B Corp, like Ceres, some of these other organizations, to evaluate your whole footprint. And in the areas that you're weaker in, to come up with strategies to, some of these companies are like 100% carbon neutral, like we can all get there. We just have to make a concerted effort.
That's amazing. What do you think are like the biggest challenges for that supply chain to actually start connecting? And regarding that product example that you were giving, what I've encountered for a very long time is if you're a small business, it's a big effort, or it's cost, it's very expensive to do. If you're a business owner and you're just trying to do meet ends meet, then how are you able to start in a way, or this capital allocation? How can we bring together all of these organizations that are, everyone's making so much efforts, like to bring us together, because of course there's more people that want to do good, and it's just how to connect.
Oh, I think that's a great question. I mean, I certainly think a great starting place is B Corp. So you can go on and take an analysis of your entire company's impact in your company, whether you're a small little consultancy or you're doing local business travel. That's a wonderful place to start. I always say, oh my God, I used to say, I am taking on the world. We've got to stop human trafficking. We have got to stop all these things. And one day I stopped in my tracks and I said, oh my God, if I help just one person at a time, I'm doing I'm giving of my life in the best way I can. And so I think it's a reasonable step-by-step commitment with your team. Every staff meeting you have, every conversation, you have to have a vertical on how are we being transparently sustainable. And then do one thing at a time, and within a year or 2 or 3, you're going to really be badassing it.
That's amazing, because yes, it's starting small. And usually what happened, at least with my own journey when I was beginning, is it felt overwhelming, right? Because it was like B Corp, in the sustainability space, in the travel part, there's like so many certifications, and it's like, where do I start? How do I become carbon neutral? How do I measure this? So it became very confusing until I decided, like you were saying, let's focus on one thing or 2 things, and then it's like a small circle that you start taking care of, and then just start building up, and then like it really changes. And what I've learned is that if you have you take one action, but we're like in this room we're over 100 people, then there's 100 actions that will be creating a big impact. today we're going to be talking first about companies, how did they start their own journey, and then like you were saying about reporting, which is very important. Besides B Corp, what other certifications or how would you recommend businesses to start if they don't have, for example, like the capacity to get into a certification process because they really need to start small besides that?
I have a great thought for you all. If you've come to this event and you own or are in a leadership position with a company, I want you to stand up and talk about your passion about sustainability. Social media, at events like this, sometimes we can be timid. Sometimes we think we don't know enough. Sometimes we don't think we're in a leadership enough position. But I would love to argue that to start today, be the leader you're born to be, and really start talking about your commitment to sustainability, start living it, and being what I call a North Star for this transformation. So you don't need a course, you don't need money, you don't need a B Corp thing to really speak to your community about this as a North Star. The second thing I want to say is that there are two certifications that are not expensive and are super powerful in this space. One I'm now a fellow in, it's called Regen Intel, which had Fleischman, who was the science director of the seminal book Drawdown. And he's now doing a second book with 52 indigenous nations where they are sharing with us how to heal this planet. Regen Intel has a fellowship, their third one just started, so you'll jump into the fourth one, where 4 days a week for 4 months you will meet the thought leaders of our generation on circular systems, living systems, and regen. And so it would be really beneficial for you to step in to learn a language of this, to get deeper into who are the thought leaders of our generation around this. The second really important group that's doing this is my colleague John Fullerton with Capital Institute, where John, he was a banker. He was down on Wall Street, and one day he woke up and he goes, "Oh my God, the finance system is broken. What are the new financial structures that actually will level the playing field so all boats rise, so that there's true equity on this planet?" Now the Capital Institute also has a fellowship training, not expensive, super impressive. And so I would recommend you taking both of those, and you will be on the forefront of this conversation of regeneration.
That's amazing, Jodi. Thank you so much for your insights. I think it's a fantastic intro for the next panels. I'm so grateful for you to be here. And I think we can keep the conversation going with the panelists that are coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the conversation. Thanks.